And we're live. Hi,
Great.
everyone, and welcome to another episode of BizBytes Live, the shortened version of BizBytes, the podcast. I'm Anthony McMahon from the IT Psychiatrist, and my guest today is Robert Blaas, a data architect from Five Pillars. Welcome, Robert, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'm going to start off with the broad question that probably a lot of people watching this are asking is, what's a data architect? What role does a data architect play in an organization?
That's a very good question. Right. So the main goal of a data architect is to assist an organization in trying to map out their information requirements at a high level and drill that through to the operational data model. It's a role that has various connections within an organization. So data architect just will talk with the executive levels to get an understanding around the strategic information requirements, and with senior management as well, and then translate those into operational data requirements that will feed into that strategic later. The data architect's role is also to ensure that there's compliance in terms of how that model is actually deployed through software development. So there is a direct connection with the technology team. And making sure that there's compliance in implementing those models. There's also an inherent understanding that the data architect is involved regularly with business analysts to ensure that from a business process modeling perspective, information requirements and data requirements are captured. So having a good understanding of business process modeling and what that involves is crucial for a data architect as well. There's also an element of security involved. So talking with the security team on how to best ensure that the organization meets compliance from a security perspective in terms of PII data management and how that is best served and implemented. You've got also the connection with the database team and making sure that from an operational perspective, all the databases are implemented according to requirements from a strategic as well as an operational perspective. So it's a very varied role. And I think it's something that you develop over time as you work through an organization, because there's a lot of aspects to the role that you need to be able to build up. I think the more important one is probably getting an understanding of what information means from an organization. That's really, really critical. So I usually see people who've gone to become data architects progress or start off their role as DBAs and have a stint in probably development aspect as well. So it's really important to be able to understand what a developer has to do. So that you're capable of talking to them and coming up with models that they're perfectly comfortable with and implementing. So you'll see data architect having had some development experience as well as system administration. Right. Certainly, if you're a DBA, you'll have touched upon that, knowing how networks operate. Be it on-prem or in the cloud. I mean, the cloud's nothing more than an extension of systems and networking. And then, of course, lead on to probably having some sort of requirements capturing type role / BA. So you understand how a BA works as well, and that you can fully converse with them and the business to be able to develop a enterprise data model from the requirements and data that that a user needs or users need to be able to perform their tasks. And this is, I think, the crucial part is as a data architect, never to forget that the way that an organization works is, and from my perspective, is it's about people, process, data, and then technology, right? So I see very much technology being an enabler to an organization, and technology changes, so you have to continuously review that. But I think it's a message that is probably very important to bring back to into IT as a whole. That it is that order. An organization consists of a group of people who perform a task. In order to perform that task, they need certain amount of information or data to do that. Once you've fully understood how that works, you can then progress into how to model that and look at the various technology components that will be able to support your organization in that.
That's a great description of the role of data architect. And there's a couple of things I'm going to pick up on from what you talked about there. One being the difference between data management and data architecture, or data planning and data governance. As you said, the progression through the roles from a DBA to a data architect, there's a number of steps in there, and a number of different areas where they should go into. But the important part within there is that management of data is not necessarily the same as strategic focus around what data can and can't be used for. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. The one serves the other, right? So data modeling, data architecture serves the purpose of strategic information requirements from an organization. And I think that's something very, very crucial to understand. Because what we're seeing now is everybody is running head over heels to try and implement all these latest craze, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and failing to understand, right, what are you trying to answer with those types of tools, right?
What's the problem you're trying to solve?
Yep. What is the business problem you're trying to solve? And more importantly, is your business capable of being able to answer those questions through the data that they have? And often what we find is we've got a swamp of data. A lot of organizations starting to realize that the quality of the information that they have has left, there's a huge hole, right? The quality is very low. So even from a simple business intelligence perspective, a lot of organizations are starting to realize that some of the reporting that they do is circumspect because the quality of the data just isn't there. So if you're just going to run head over heels into doing artificial intelligence and machine learning based on faulty data, you run the risk of potentially driving your business faster into the ground because you're now letting the machine make the decisions for you, right?
It's that age-old saying of bad in, bad out, bad data in, bad data out. That the decisions you make can only be as good as the information you've got at any one time. And if your data is not structured before it's put in, it's not going to help you guide to a good decision.
Exactly. Yeah. What's important is to be able, through data architecture, what you're trying to do is provide the organization with an element of trust, right? Indicators of trust around that data. So when I'm viewing my reports, my dashboards, or even just an operational report, right? What level of confidence can I have in that data that it's providing me? Can I have enough confidence to be able to make a decision on that? And interestingly enough, there's been a couple of surveys done through Gartner and Forrester and others, where the general opinion within organizations these days on a senior executive level is they still tend to go with their gut feeling in terms of making a decision. They're not relying enough on the data because they feel that the data is of a poor quality. Often what you find is that there's also a lack of consistency around the definitions of that data. So, and that's the objective of having a data architecture in place as well. As one component is around metadata. And that sounds like a very stuffy word, right? But really what it is it's your corporate dictionary, right? When we define customer, or when we define a sale, or when we define revenue, we all have one standard definition of what that means. So there's no risk of misinterpretation of how that is calculated or how that is viewed, right? And that often within an organization is missing as well. I've plenty of times I've sat across various meetings between different departments where they're arguing amongst each other in terms of revenue data or sales data because they can't agree on the definition, or they're using a common term, but the definition that they've applied to that term is absolutely different. A great example of that is sales, right? What sales means for marketing is not necessarily the same what it means for finance. And based on that figure, you get for marketing, what's important is the payout of commission, right? Yet for finance, they want to minimize the payout of commission, right? So if you don't have the common definition around that and how it's supposed to be interpreted, you're going to risk creating silos of reporting, silos of information, because each view it in their own way and say, well, I don't agree with what's coming out, so I'll just pull my data from somewhere else and make it look like what it needs to look like. And the end result is when that slowly bubbles up to the surface at a senior management or executive level, you get contradictory information coming through. And they say, well, hang on a minute, what's going on? Marketing is telling me this, finance is telling me this. How am I supposed to make a decision on that?
And it's great point within there about the need to have a consistent understanding or a consistent definition of the different points of data. I've seen organizations who don't have that consistent understanding, and it's made it very hard for them to move forward. But equally, they haven't had the role around data governance. And I do want to talk about data governance in a moment, but coming back to your introduction as well, one thing that you talked about in there was that data management, data architecture is separate to technology architecture, where technology is looking at the systems and frameworks that an organization needs to develop or deliver to move forward or adopt, depending on what they do, whereas data sits outside. And I think it's a very interesting point, one that you and I have talked about before, that data exists separate to technology. Data doesn't need a system to be there. It can be written down. It can be as simple as a phone book as a database at the end of the day. Technology just enables the access, the storing, the management, the visualization of that data. Do you find that many of the clients you work with haven't quite got that distinction, that technology and data are two different entities that can actually exist independent of each other, although technology probably needs data more than data needs technology?
Yes, very much so. So often enough, organizations tend to equate data directly with the technology, i.e. the underlying database with its tables, and hence, bang, that's my data and that's my information layer. No. Your information layer is based on your business process model, right? So, and that is, I think, very crucial, is making sure that an organization understands its business process and documents that in a business process model. Because when someone does a particular task, regardless of whether it is now or whether it was 50 years ago, 50 years ago, we still used or had data and information to perform that task, right? It's important to model that, get an understanding of how it's used, how it's transformed. And on that basis, then you can say, right, how does my technology layer support that? And often what you have now is it's the other way around, right? Oh, no, my application, be it an ERP package, often enough, you'll find an ERP package dictating how an organization should perform its business, right? And that's not correct, right? You have a particular strategy and vision for your organization of where you want to take it, how you want to do your business. You shouldn't let technology dictate how it does that for you. Technology should support whatever it is that you want to do. And often enough, the whole component of data is just muddled within that technology layer, and they just give it a cursory glance in terms of, okay, is it fit for purpose, right? The fit for purpose is defined within your business process model and your business process architecture. Yeah, technology needs to be segregated out from that.
Yeah, and I think even regardless of how big an organization is, that's a principle that they should be holding very closely to. Having worked in a large organization and having worked with smaller clients as well, the distinction of separating data and tech has been quite key to how things roll. And I've seen data swamps evolve. I've seen data swamps stagnate even further than what they are.
Yeah.
From within there as well. And there's probably a lesson in here for any company that's looking to start out, even though we're not probably in the right time for companies to be starting out. But the lesson being that plan your data correctly on day one. Put good practice in place on day one, so that as you grow and as you evolve, you don't get into that swamp. You've actually got useful data that grows with your company.
Yes, I think the other one that's playing an important role in it, and potentially causing more issues down the track is the whole agile approach that organizations are taking to running their technology projects, if you will, because there's such a drive to do things faster and get or at least perceived as a higher turnaround in getting these projects implemented. Often people tend to cut corners, and this is not something you can cut corners with, right? It's like designing a house. You don't come up to your builder and say, right, I first want to see the roof, yeah? And then, oh, no, I've changed my mind. I now want to see the first floor, but only the 3 windows upstairs. The other ones, they'll come later, right? Oh, forget it now, but I now need to add the lower floor with the front door. No, the process is you talk to your architect, you come up with a design, which is then handed over to your builder, who will, based on that, build the house that you expect, right? And that's really what it is. It's about making sure that organizations upfront do an analysis of what it is that they require in order to support their business processes. Once you've set that out, you can start breaking that down into various components to build out, right? But if you're just going to go in through a haphazard way of my former explanation, then you wind up with a lot of different silos that don't communicate with one another anymore. And then if you try and make those pieces integrate, it becomes really, really difficult, to the point where it might not even be possible. And the worst is, from a data perspective, certainly now we've got requirements around compliance and governance, right? Certainly the compliance is hammering a lot of organizations, especially in financial and insurance business. And if you've got systems that can't talk to each other properly, how can you guarantee that your quality level is there from a compliance perspective?
So I think we've hit the nail on the head with this one as well, Robert. For the audience there, the number one thing they need to know about data governance or data management is to get it right from day one and stick to those principles. It's not too late, though, for companies that haven't focused on good principles around data governance early on. So just to wrap up, what are the 5 things that you recommend any company, regardless of how big they are, the 5 critical components of a good data governance framework?
So the first would be making sure that your organization has a business architecture or model set out, regardless of whether you're a small, medium, or large organization. You should be able to do that, right? And it doesn't have to be to the nth degree, but at least get some basic understanding of what the various processes are within an organization. That then allows you to build out an information map and that will assist you in defining the various areas of data and information that you need to support those. The other is then to model that information, right? Because once you have that enterprise model, you have your enterprise business process model, you develop your business enterprise data model based on that. It makes it easier to identify areas that you need to change or work on or develop supporting a technology layer, because you can break it down. But if you don't have that map, you don't know where to start, right? So that's the first thing. The other is probably around security, making sure that you understand what your obligations are in terms of legislative requirements around the Privacy Act, and any other type of compliance reporting that you have, and make sure that that is upfront, right? You fully understand that, so you can build that in. And then the other would be certainly getting an understanding of in order to be able to define, let's say, a data trust indicator. Identify various areas of measurement around your data so that you get an understanding of, right, what is the level of quality that I'm looking at? Perform profiling activities on the data that you have so you can gauge, right, how good is this? Because if I want to use it in a report, if it's 95% correct, hey, great, I'm confident I can use that data and I can have confidence in the report that comes out. Yet if it's 50%, well, you may as well flip a coin and base your decisions on that, right? And the other one is probably also a component around master data management. So in order to, and that will help you address the issues of siloed information that has been built up over time, right? So try and work towards developing a plan around getting a single definition and data source around customer, around your products, even simple things like staff, right? How many versions of staff databases are running around? So master data management would be very, very important, because once you have all of those basic components there, you can start looking at doing data warehousing and business intelligence with confidence, which is really what you want to try and get to.
Definitely. And great tips in there. We'll be summarizing those off the back of this as well for people. So, Robert, just to wrap up on this, I know there'll be a lot of companies out there who'll be looking for support from someone like yourself. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
They can reach out to me via LinkedIn. I've got my profile there. I've got my website as well, although that's still in a stage of construction. I guess you know that feeling, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So certainly through LinkedIn, not a problem. People can reach me on there. I don't believe too much in Facebook, but I don't have a Facebook profile either. So LinkedIn is the best way.
LinkedIn is the best way. And it's Robert Blaas, BLAAS.
Correct.
And your website, 5pillars.co.nz. Now, is that 5 with the number?
It's 5pillars.nz. So someone has already taken the co.nz.
And is that 5 with the 5 or 5 as a word?
5 as in the number.
The number. Cool. 5pillars.nz. Well, Robert, look, thank you very much for your time today. And we will be running more conversations like this. And I'd love to get you back on to talk a little bit more about. We really skimmed across the top of data management and data governance in this session, but I'd like to explore some of those other themes, particularly around the modeling and the usability and the single source of, or single definition of data. So do keep an eye on the channel here for more conversations with Robert Blaas. But Robert, thank you very much for your time today, and for everyone watching as well, don't forget to subscribe or click follow to keep getting updated on these videos. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome. Thanks.
All right, so we're